Okay, today I'm going to show you how to reassemble your completely disassembled nitro motor. And first off, to do so, you're going to need an oil of some type, afterrun oil, anything's fine. I choose to have mineral oil. It seems to work on all the high-speed equipment that my dad works with. So I figured, why can't it work for now? So you take your oil, for starters, and the first thing you're going to install is your crankshaft. So put a little bit of oil on there, and I usually choose to work it in a bit with my fingers. Also, you put oil on the inside of the engine along the bearings and through the center. Now, you simply just slide your crankshaft in. Now you take more oil for the second step, the piston, and you put a dot of oil right between the piston and the connecting rod. Also, put a dot of oil on the oiling hole right there to ensure that this copper washer right here is completely oiled. Now, orientate your piston with the cut edge, that side, towards, I repeat, towards the flywheel. That is very important. If you do not put that towards the flywheel, it will, when the piston comes down on the downstroke, it will crack your piston, leading you to buy new nitro motor, which sucks when you're just trying to fix it in the first place, or rebuild it just because it's just cleaning it. And I know it's tempting to use any tools on this part, but just use your fingers. It's way safer. If you use any tools, you risk scarring. Now, once you have your piston in there, take some more of your oil and place it around the channel where your piston runs and around the piston ring. And cycle your piston a couple times just to make sure it's working properly. If it is not, that means you either put the piston in wrong and it's hitting the crankshaft, and you need to take it out and replace it in and re-put it in. Now you install your cleaned piston sleeve, making sure there's no foreign contaminants on it, and put a couple drops of your oil in there. Work it around, make sure it's covered. Put some more oil on the outside. Don't be afraid to get your fingers dirty. Now, there's a line on your piston sleeve, right there, that notch. It lines up with the notch on the engine. So, once you get the piston dead center, you slide in the sleeve. Don't force it. This just got stuck. If you're finding that you need to force a part, there's something wrong with the part. Once you get your piston sleeve in there, make sure it's lining up with that notch. And slide it into place. Cycle your piston a couple times. Make sure it's working well. Now, you put your one-way bearing. If you have an internal one-way bearing, you put your one-way bearing inside of your back plate. Usually, since the car manufacturer, since they make a 0.28 and a 0.21 engine, they didn't want to make two different internal bearings. So one notch, two of these notches directly across from each other are for the 0.21, and the two across from each other on this side are the 0.28. I happen to have the 0.28. The one safe way to figure out which one's the one that your car hooks up to is you could see where it's worn down. You center that on top, making sure this notch right here on the back plate is up, because otherwise your piston will come down and crack. Put your piston in line with your one-way bearing. Turn the motor over. You'll feel it kind of pop into place a little bit. And you cycle your motor a couple times. The one way to tell if your one-way bearing is working or in place, slide your shaft in. And if it starts spinning as you're cycling your motor, that means you have installed it correctly. Mine wasn't quite popped in all the way, so I'll retry. There we go. Now that is completely installed of your back plate, all it's left to do is put in your screws or your Allen wrench bolts and your back plate's finished. When tightening these bolts, tighten one, go diagonal. You don't tighten them all the way, you just barely tighten them till you start feeling it get it a little bit tighter. Cross over, tighten, cross over, tighten,